Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in e-discovery and related areas. Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socia, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available at the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select Resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live Cast. Today, I am pleased to welcome as our guest, Kristin Sunderman. Kristin is the Litigation Support Director, Legal Division at Freddie Mac, and comes with years of experience on the corporate, on the provider, and on the law firm side. Kristin started out 5 years in law firms in secretarial and paralegal roles, moved on to the corporate side, working first at Merck and then at Teva Pharmaceuticals, and then spent 10 years on the provider side, working primarily at eTerra, moving up from through the ranks from project manager to managing director of operations, briefly at Haystack through the acquisition of eTerra, and since then finally at West Litigation Group. Just this last year, Kristin joined Freddie Mac, and we are pleased to have her with us here today.
Hi, George. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Glad you could join us.
Thank you for having me.
You've got a much better background there than I do. You've got the comfort of a real living room. I'm sitting in an office with a green screen. But hey,
what can you do?
What can you do? So we've got several things we want to cover. One topic I would like to turn to, we chatted about this a little before, is one that we have not touched in any of the previous, I think we've done 13 episodes now. And that is COVID. And how COVID has been impacting e-discovery and what machine learning adds for that, where it all fits for you, that whole big world. Now that I've given you that wide-ranging question, where would you like to go with it?
Well, how have you not talked about COVID? I'm impressed that I get to be the first one to talk about it, and we're about to enter into the second year of it almost. So there's a lot, I think, to unpack with COVID. COVID has impacted our lives in many, many ways. I think that's part of the issue with the pandemic is it's much more far-reaching than just work or personal. It's pretty much impacted everything that we're doing. If you think about, just even when it started off, everything came to a screeching halt. Courts were closed. Everything stopped. When I first went into the office at Freddie just to get the lay of the land, it was a ghost town. There were empty cups because people literally looked like they just up and left in the middle of COVID. And trying to pick up the pieces after that, I think there's going to be some challenges. We all came in-house. I'm sitting in my home now. And once you did that transition, everything was chaotic because we were not only remote workers, we were IT specialists, we are homeschoolers, we're, everything under the sun at once. And I think that we're going to see moving forward that as a result of that chaos, people maybe weren't as disciplined or maybe didn't even know how to handle data or communications or preservation. And there, there's that big meeting you had, a status conference where your computer wasn't working. So you went to your kid's computer or you went to the iPad or something to try to get your materials available. And who can blame you? With all of the chaos, we just have all been trying to survive. But I think the implications of collections are going to be impactful, data preservation, data governance even, because there's going to be this period of time that's somewhat of a black hole in a lot of ways, with things being all over the place. And we don't have an end in sight. We're now in the phase of adapting to what will that look like. How is e-discovery going to be impacted? How do we keep going? Because as much as things halted, we still have to move forward. We still have a job to do. I mean, the legal field is considered an essential industry. So how do we continue on? And I think there's going to be a big reliance and continued reliance on remote collections. Collecting has always been a combination. You do remote when you can, but for the most part, you'll have a team, depending on the size, in-house for 3 or 4 days doing collections on site. And with all of the restrictions and social distancing, that's less and less ideal. So I think there's a big window for this remote collection to be expanded, and for more robust tools, more expansive tools. And that's just really, I think, going to be a really sweet spot for vendors to try to get into, because there's a big need. And I don't see that changing, because once you find a way to collect remotely, is anyone really going to want to go back to being in-house and sending these teams all over the country, and that grind of that, on the road 5 days a week for forensic specialists it's challenging and it's difficult. So why not continue down this path, right? I mean, look at all the corporations that are even going towards keeping their workers remote because of the cost savings and the flexibility. And I'm anxious to get back to the office, but I am somewhat in an anomaly, I think, in that regard. I think that collection's a big piece of it for sure. That's going to impact it. And then I also think the industry as a whole has slowed down a little bit. There weren't, or we haven't had the ability to get data to the vendors, or we haven't been able to collect as quickly, or we haven't been able to even process as quickly, because everyone's in this new world where you're either trying to process from home for the first time, or you're trying to coordinate couriers and collecting data and somebody to plug in the drive. There's so many different variables that now take a lot more time or thought or creative solutions to get done that wasn't an issue when we were all in the office. And as that's happening, I think we're also going to look at, well, if we can slow down a little bit for this, then what does that mean for the overall picture? Do we really need to be pushing things out in the same way that we were? Or, especially for people like me who are in-house, can we keep some of that in-house now? Is there really even the need to do that? The approach across the board will start to shift, I think, just because we're now looking at the world very differently than we did before. The world is much bigger, and there's just not that face-to-face need isn't as essential anymore. We're seeing that even here. Normally I'd be in the office with you, right? Talking to you and drinking coffee or whatever the case may be. But here we are, I'm on my couch, and don't make me stand up. I don't want to show you my sweats. It's a different life right now. And I expect that post-COVID, a lot of that's going to carry over, because there are some real benefits to it. And we've had it going on long enough to where we're now finding solutions to the challenges. We're finding solutions to being at home and the connection issues and the IT issues, and people are determining how to, remote into computers and into the office so that they don't have to be in there. They're doing these remote collections, doing remote reviews, across the board. Remote review has started to take off before the pandemic, and now it's a no-brainer. I mean, that's where you want to be, right? And the people that are starting to dip their toe into it now, I think, are at a disadvantage to those vendors that were already doing it before, because they were already ahead of the game with the security, and they were already looking at those things. But I'll be the first to admit, when I heard about remote review, no way, there's so many security issues. You don't know who's going to see it, the clean desk policies, all of these things that are much easier to control when you have everyone in one room. But we're finding ways around it. We're finding ways to make it defensible. We're finding ways to work with it. And I think that will continue on, because we're also driving the price down, right? Everything is now going to be so much more competitive, and you can make much more money as a managed review service doing remote review, because your pool's much bigger and you have your accessibility. So as that shift is happening, I think it's going to really turn the vendors on their side and looking at new ways to service in-house and law firms, because our approach is just very different with the world in the way that it is right now.
So two big areas of change, of course, are the collection side. None of us are hopping on airplanes anymore and trying to carry hard drives through customs, if that's even a viable option. Similarly, right. We are, the review centers are, for the time being, closed down. And
right.
we're learning to handle things remotely. What sort of impact are you seeing when it comes to where systems are deployed, on premise, in the cloud, via mobile solutions, things like that?
Right. Well, certainly, for me personally, I spent much of my career doing on-prem, hardware, the brick and mortar type business. Although we had remote workers, data centers were steel and massive. And there's been a big push to go over to more of the web-based applications for many reasons. But now with the pandemic, it just makes so much more sense because you are giving over some control of the back end, but you're getting so much more. You have all the securities in place. It's a no-brainer. It's secure. There's no question, I think, about that. That's been proved and defensible that it's a secure practice. But you have much more control over whether you can scale up or scale down. You're no longer dependent on a company that has this massive infrastructure to be able to provide more space for you, or to provide bigger workspaces. Especially being in-house, we can start to bring all of that stuff in. We can go to the web-based tools. We don't have to worry about jump servers or remote access or VPN. We can go directly to where we need to go, expand up if we need to, bring it down. So I think that the cloud-based piece alone has been a huge game changer for in-house people like myself, because we now have access to those same tools that we maybe wouldn't have had before. And that allows us to do more of the work inside of the corporations. And in turn, I think people like me who've been in the industry for a very long time are starting to go in-house, and we're getting a lot more skilled and experienced with like real life experience e-discovery, as this is somewhat of a, I won't say it's a new field. It's just it continues to evolve, right? When the E got in front of the discovery, everything's changed a little bit. But I think that as that continues to happen, we have this new age of people going in-house that are highly skilled and have done this work. And so managing cases doesn't seem like a alarming task or something that is beyond our possibilities. And with these cloud-based solutions that can scale up and down, and now all the machine learning and the artificial intelligence, it now allows us to use our smaller in-house groups to do a lot more work. It's amazing the stuff that we can do with almost a skeleton crew of e-discovery specialists who are skilled and knowledgeable in these tools. But then we have so much coming to help us, assist us to get us to where we need. It automatically changes it. There's always been, there's this push in the past few years of not always been, I guess, over the past few years, there's been this push to bring more in-house, but there was always limitations. And I heard everything from 5 gigabytes even up to like 500, just depending on the tools you have in-house as to what you can handle. And then at that point you cap it and it has to go to a vendor. And I think the cloud-based solutions and all of the AI and machine learning that's becoming available to us is going to change that, because we can now really analyze, call, go through massive amounts of data with the help of technology. And this technology is now being made available to us in a very tangible way. For a corporation like Freddie to bring in an on-prem software solution that can handle up to 10 terabytes of data is an overhaul. It's a huge undertaking. But now we can go over and we can sign up with one of the cloud-based vendors, and we'll have that much and more at any given time if we need to, all while keeping all of our cybersecurity issues at bay. And so it's a win-win, I think, in a lot of ways, and will certainly start to shift, I think, the industry as a whole, because vendors have been seen as the ones who, in-house really handles the small matters that aren't too impactful, and we send anything of significance out. And I think that that's really going to start to shift, and you'll see much more of a partnership between vendors and in-house e-discovery centers, both at firms and corporations, where they'll have to work together on not only approach, but strategy and manpower, and much less of the just deferring to vendors as the experts in the field, because of the diversity and because of the fact that COVID has not only caused us all to reevaluate how and where we spend our time, it's also, I think, having corporations look at the same thing. So across the board, everything's getting reevaluated as to what makes more sense. And the technology is just blowing everything out of the water. I mean, I saw, as you are aware, I saw recently, there's analytics right now in the coding panel. So when you go through in a review, you can literally see right there comparables, and it'll start to rate it and scale it. And it's just changing the face of review into a much more tangible way, making things exciting for me as for somebody who's gone in-house. I think that the possibilities are open, and it's really cool to see how it's shifting. But that's this industry. This industry doesn't really stay the same. It takes.
So I would be remiss if I didn't say that you're talking about the reveal coding panel.
I
right?
am talking about the reveal coding.
Sorry. You are
am.
one of those people who has made that move from the provider side to in-house, and you were in-house provider and in-house again. What's it like? What's it been like to return from the vendor side to the in-house role?
It's very different. It's very different. It's exciting, I think, just because of all of these changes that are happening. And because I do feel like there's more of us that are going in house. So this is becoming a different type of arena, and where I think we're really making a name for ourselves. And also,
there's my dog. The world we live in.
Right. COVID.
Yep,
See, it's
that's
totally
right.
normal.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure mine will come running around here in a minute. Not to
I'm
worry.
gonna have to do what I can. Sorry about this.
No problem. This is real life, right?
It is. Right in the middle of the recording, I let the dog in. Hopefully he'll calm down. So sorry about that.
I'm sure he will. He just had to listen to me drone on. I'm sure he'll be fine. So, it's exciting for me because I think that in-house is becoming much more reputable, and much more of a decision maker. I think we were a small subset of the industry, historically, but I think that's shifting now, and that there's going to be a lot more of thought leadership and helping to shape the way the industry goes from people like me that have come in house, because we are seeing the needs up close and personal. At the vendor side, you see everything on a matter by matter basis, and that's kind of how you handle it. Being in house, I'm looking at not a matter by matter. I'm looking at department by department. I'm looking at data preservation. I'm looking at data classification, things that, all go into my ability to collect and do e-discovery, but on a much bigger scale. So if you can start to tie all of that in together, I think that the approach is a little bit more expansive, and you'll start to see a lot of just emerging technology to help support it. We already are, as we've discussed with the automated processes and artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's changing the way we even look at data. It's changing how we deal with data. Long gone are the days of where you just have one approach, where you're just sitting and looking through boxes and boxes of documents. You now have options. You can do a straight review. You can do analytics. You can do anything you want under the sun, grouping, coding, conceptual, whatever it is. It seems to be the time that you can just make a wish, and your data can somehow, one of these tools will find a way to bring the information out. Just have to find the right tool. And I think that's where you'll continue to see the partnership between the vendors and in-house counsel, because there's an argument to be said for bringing work in-house, but there's also an argument for sending it out, because you do have a limited number of resources in-house. So you will have your tools that you use that will be phenomenal, that will get you to where you want to go. But there's always going to be those cases that need some diversity of technology or diversity of thought, or need to have a little bit of a different approach. And I think that's when that thought process will come, and that partnership between in-house and vendors will really start to grow and flourish as you come up with these more complex approaches. And that's exciting, because this industry changes so rapidly. To have the diversity of thought is always usually brings about some pretty fantastic results.
Okay. As you were talking earlier in this discussion, I was thinking, you might be making some of the service providers out there a little bit nervous.
Well, wouldn't be
With
the
the,
first time.
wouldn't be the first time with the concern that their work is the need for them is going to be evaporating. It sounds like that's not going to be the case. It's going to be evolving and shifting, but
Exactly.
there is going to be a
Exactly.
role for all three
Exactly.
groups here.
Absolutely. And this is not new to vendors. I mean, vendors have been doing this since paper days. You know, they are very good at evolving and finding the needs. And I think that this is just going to be another extension of that. I mean, remote collections, remote review. I mean, those are going to be some very big areas for vendors. You know, so that maybe were less so before. So I think it's fair to say that it's changing, but I wouldn't say it's evaporating. My heart is with vendors. I was in the vendor world for a very long time, so I certainly see a lot of value there. But I think there's going to be some adapting, and that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
So you mentioned earlier, make a wish. So I'm going to ask you to make a wish. If you could have, you know what's coming. If you could have your ideal e-discovery platform, no limitations whatsoever. Everything is possible, no matter how ridiculous. Price is not at all a factor. So anything you could want, think as narrowly or as expansively as you want. What would this ideal e-discovery platform look like for you?
George, I told you, I tried very hard to come up with some quippy type platform, and I am so boring. I was not able to.
Sometimes the
But
apparently boring is actually the most exciting.
I still stick with if you could have something that could also give me a foot massage while I was collecting my data, that would be great. No, honestly, I think what is the first thing when I was thinking about, well, what would that look like? I mean, because so much of what I would wish for is already coming out and is in fruition. You know, the machine learning and that piece is like a dream come true from somebody who's old school like me, who did sit in warehouses reviewing documents back in the day. You know, all of these platforms that are coming out are
We
mind
don't
blowing.
have to brush and blow the dust off the top of the boxes and worry about what we're going to find
My
when we open up
fingers
the
don't
box.
hurt. Right. There's no spiders jumping out, dead
They're
rats.
not turning brown and that weird oily feeling you get on them. We don't have any
Yes.
of that anymore.
No, and it's
Yeah.
pretty glorious, I have to say.
Yes.
The first time I saw some of the analytic capabilities of machine learning, I got a little misty-eyed at, how amazing it is. Almost to like, I wish I still did document review. It would be great to be able to experience this. But I think for me, especially now moving in-house, if I were to say what would be the ideal platform, it would be a platform that could do everything I needed to do, obviously, collect, pull, process, review, host, but not increase the data footprint. Right now, like that's such a big deal because of collecting and pulling into another place, and data is growing exponentially as it is, and data management is such a huge part of what I'm now doing every day, that it would be great if there were a tool that could do everything and give us the same results that we need without increasing the data footprint.
So let's dive into that a little bit. By not increasing the data footprint, do you mean by that we wouldn't have to, or you wouldn't have to go into your system, make a copy of the data, take that copy somewhere else, send it there, and then who knows, they make a copy of a portion of it, and that goes somewhere else, and then they make a copy of a portion, and so that's part of what you're trying to avoid, right?
Right. Right.
Which I think then means that the technology would have to be able to ride on top of the data where it exists.
It would.
Natively.
Yep. It'd be a behind the firewall solution. It would have to be.
Or at least be able to hook into what's behind the firewall. Right? With a semi-permeable membrane with the firewall there.
All while being secure.
Absolutely.
Easy peasy.
I told you, no limitations, right?
That's right. That's right.
So it will ride on top of data wherever that data might be. Even if it's in multiple locations.
Sure, no problem.
Everything's possible.
Anything.
It will create almost no additional footprint. Its additional footprint will be only that data which it needs to create and store itself, and not any of the underlying data. Right. Would it be able to inject new data into the existing data stores?
Sure. Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
What
We're
sort of,
wishing here, right?
that's right. What sort of data would you want injected into the existing data stores?
Well, I guess it depends on the case for sure.
Yeah, of course.
Um, and the input maybe from the team. Yeah, that's really. I mean, I think data is such a big um, issue right now, and it just keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. That's probably what I would say the biggest pain point. And as long as it can keep learning how to code documents and categorize them and doing all the cool things that it's doing now with these advanced machine learning and analytics and artificial intelligence, I don't know what else I could possibly want besides the foot massage.
It sounds like you're also trying to make your records management counterparts happy, information governance counterparts happy, right?
Right. I definitely am because she's amazing and I definitely want her on my team and on my side. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on here. This has been fun.
Thank you. This has been great. Thank you, Kristin. We have had with us as our guest today, Kristin Sunderman, who is Litigation Support Director, Legal Division at Freddie Mac. I am George Sosha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Next week, joining us on January 15th will be David Stanton, who is an eDiscovery partner at the Pillsbury Law Firm. Kristin, thank you very much.
Thanks, George. Bye-bye.